13 Disturbing Idaho Park Ranger Stories. Story 1, The Ranger Who Walked Away, 2005. My first year as a full-time ranger, I was 27 years old, eager and idealistic, convinced that I could make a difference. My mentor was a man named Frank Kowalski, a 52-year-old veteran who'd been in the Forest Service for more than 30 years. Frank was tough, no nonsense, and he didn't suffer fools gladly, but he was also kind in his own gruff way, and he taught me everything I know about the job. One day, Frank didn't show up for work. That was unusual. Frank was never late, never missed a shift. When I called his house, there was no answer. I drove out to his cabin, a small place at the end of a dirt road about 10 miles from the ranger station. His truck was in the driveway, his gear was inside, and there was a half-eaten breakfast on the table. But Frank was gone. I searched the property, calling his name. Nothing. I checked the forest around his cabin, following the trails he liked to walk. Nothing. I reported him missing, and a search party was organized. We searched for 3 days, covering every inch of the surrounding forest. We found nothing. No sign of Frank, no indication of where he'd gone. The official report listed him as missing, presumed deceased. But I never believed that. Frank knew those woods better than anyone. He wouldn't have gotten lost, wouldn't have wandered off. Something happened to him, something that left no trace. Years later, I was going through some old files in the ranger station when I found a note in Frank's handwriting. It was taped to the inside of a desk drawer, hidden from view. It said, "If I disappear, don't look for me. The forest takes what it wants." I still have that note. I keep it in my wallet, a reminder that there are things in this world that we don't understand, forces we can't control. And I wonder, sometimes, if Frank knew what was coming for him. Story 2, The Hunter Who Wasn't a Hunter, 2007. It was late October, and the hunting season was in full swing. The forest was full of orange vests and rifle shots, the sounds of men pursuing deer and elk through the autumn woods. I was patrolling a remote section of the forest when I came across a man sitting by the side of the trail. He was dressed in hunting gear, orange vest, camouflage pants, heavy boots, but he didn't have a rifle, or a bow, or any kind of weapon. "Everything okay?" I asked, approaching cautiously. The man looked up at me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. His eyes were wrong. Not the eyes of a hunter, focused and alert, but the eyes of someone who'd seen something they couldn't process. "I saw it," he said. "I saw it in the trees." "Saw what?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "You wouldn't believe me. Nobody believes me." "Try me," I said. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "It was tall, taller than any man I've ever seen, and it was covered in hair, dark hair, matted like it had been living in the woods for years. It was standing right there, watching me." "Where?" I asked. "Where did you see it?" He pointed into the forest, toward a dense thicket of pines. "Over there." It was standing between 2 trees, just watching. I looked at it and it looked at me, and then it just vanished, like it was never there. I searched the area he'd indicated, but I found nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no signs that anything had been there. The man was still sitting by the trail when I came back. He didn't look at me. He just sat there, staring into the trees, his eyes wide and unfocused. "You should go home," I said. "Get some rest. You look like you've had a shock." He nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I think I will." I watched him walk back toward his truck, his steps slow and unsteady. I never saw him again, but I heard later that he'd checked himself into a psychiatric hospital. He told his doctors that he'd seen something in the woods, something that shouldn't exist. I don't know what he saw, but I know he wasn't lying. Story 3, The Camp That Disappeared, 2009. In the summer of 2009, a family of 4, father, mother, and 2 young children, went camping in the Clearwater National Forest. They were experienced campers, and they'd chosen a site that was remote but accessible, about 5 miles from the nearest road. They were supposed to be there for a week. They didn't make it to day 3. Another camper reported seeing the family's campsite abandoned, with all their gear still in place. When I arrived on the scene, I found exactly what the report described: tents, sleeping bags, cooking equipment, even a half-eaten meal still on the table. But no people. I searched the area thoroughly, looking for any sign of what had happened. The ground was soft, and I could clearly see the footprints of 4 people leading away from the campsite. I followed them for about half a mile, through the trees and across a small creek. And then they stopped. Just stopped, no footprints leading away, no signs of a struggle, no indication of where they'd gone. I reported the incident, and a massive search was conducted. Helicopters, search dogs, hundreds of volunteers. We covered every inch of the surrounding forest. We never found them, not a single trace. The official report listed the family as missing, presumed deceased. But there was no evidence of foul play, no bodies, nothing to explain what had happened to them. I still think about that family sometimes. I think about the half-eaten meal on the table, the sleeping bags that were still warm, the footprints that led nowhere, and I wonder what happened to them. I don't think I'll ever know. Story 4, The Man in the White Suit, 2011. This is the one that still haunts me. It was a cold November morning, and I was doing a routine patrol of a section of the forest that had been closed to the public due to fire danger. I was about 3 miles from the ranger station when I saw him. A man walking through the forest wearing a white suit. Not a hiking outfit, not camping gear, a white suit like something you'd wear to a wedding or a funeral. I called out to him, but he didn't respond. He just kept walking, his steps slow and measured, his head held high. I followed him, keeping a safe distance. He led me through the forest, along trails I'd never seen before, into a part of the woods I didn't recognize. And then he stopped. He turned around and looked at me, and I felt my blood run cold. His face was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes were completely white. No pupils, no irises, just blank white orbs. "Ranger," he said, his voice soft and hollow, "you shouldn't be here." "Who are you?" I asked, my hand moving to my sidearm. He smiled, a thin, cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm the one who walks between," he said. "I'm the one who watches, and I'm the one who warns." "Warns about what?" He stepped closer, and I instinctively stepped back. His smile widened. "The forest is hungry, Ranger. It's always been hungry, and it's getting hungrier." And then he vanished, just vanished, like a puff of smoke in the wind. I stood there for a long moment, my heart pounding, my mind racing, and then I turned and ran back to the ranger station. I never saw the man in the white suit again, but sometimes, late at night, I think about what he said. I think about the forest being hungry. And I wonder if he was right. Story 5, The Trail That Didn't Exist, 2013. I'd been a ranger for 8 years by 2013, and I knew the trails of the Panhandle like the back of my hand. I'd walked every mile of them, multiple times. I knew where they went, where they turned, where they ended. That's why I knew, without a doubt, that the trail I found that day didn't exist. I was doing a routine patrol of the eastern boundary, an area I'd covered dozens of times before. I was following a familiar trail when I noticed something strange, a branch just off the main path that I'd never seen before. I approached it cautiously, pushing aside the underbrush, and there it was, a trail, clear and distinct, leading into the forest. I followed it for about a mile, my heart racing. The trail was well maintained, almost as if someone had been tending to it regularly, but there were no signs of recent use, no footprints, no broken branches, nothing. The trail led to a small clearing, and in the center of the clearing stood a single tree, an ancient, gnarled pine that seemed out of place among the younger trees around it. And hanging from one of its branches was a child's shoe. It was a small shoe, maybe for a 3 or 4-year-old. It was old, weathered, covered in moss. It looked like it had been there for decades. I approached the tree, my heart pounding. As I got closer, I saw that there were more shoes, dozens of them, hanging from the branches of the tree. Small shoes, children's shoes, all old and weathered and covered in moss. I counted them, there were 47. I reported the discovery, and a team was sent to investigate, but when they arrived, the trail was gone. The clearing was gone. The tree was gone. There was nothing there but dense, impenetrable forest. The official report listed the incident as unsubstantiated, but I know what I saw. I counted those shoes, 47 of them. And I wonder sometimes whose shoes they were and how they got there. Story 6, The Light in the Sky, 2015. It was a clear summer night, and I was at the ranger station, enjoying a rare moment of peace. The sky was thick with stars, and I could see the Milky Way stretching across the heavens like a river of light. And then I saw it, a light, moving across the sky, faster than any aircraft I'd ever seen. It wasn't a plane. Planes move in straight lines, their lights steady and predictable. This light was different. It moved in patterns, weaving and looping, stopping and starting, as if it was controlled by something that didn't follow the laws of physics. I watched it for nearly an hour, transfixed. It moved across the sky, sometimes stopping to hover in place, sometimes shooting off in a new direction at impossible speeds. And then, without any warning, it shot straight down into the forest. I grabbed my gear and headed toward the spot where the light had descended. It was about 5 miles from the ranger station, in a remote section of the forest that was difficult to access. When I arrived, I found nothing. No wreckage, no signs of impact, no indication that anything had landed there. Just the forest, quiet and still, as if nothing had happened. I searched the area for hours, but I found nothing. The next day, I reported the incident to my supervisor. He listened, nodded, and said, "Probably a meteor." "A meteor that stopped and hovered?" I asked. "A meteor that moved in patterns?" "Probably a meteor," he repeated. I didn't argue, but I know what I saw, and it wasn't a meteor. Story 7, The Cry in the Night, 2016. I'd heard the stories, we all had. The stories about the woman who wandered the forest at night, crying for her lost child. The stories about the sound that would lure you deeper into the woods, away from safety, towards something that waited in the darkness. I didn't believe them, not really. I thought they were just campfire tales, the kind of stories people tell to scare each other. Until I heard it myself. It was late October, and I was doing a solo patrol of the northern boundary. The night was cold and clear, and I could see my breath in the air. I was about 4 miles from the station when I heard it, a woman's voice, crying, calling out for help. "Help me," she cried. "Please, someone help me." I called out, "Hello, where are you?" The crying stopped, and then from somewhere in the darkness, a voice replied, "I'm lost. I can't find my way out. Please help me." I followed the voice, pushing through the underbrush, calling out to let her know I was coming. The voice led me deeper into the forest, away from the trail, into a part of the woods I didn't recognize. And then, suddenly, the voice stopped. I stood there in the darkness, my heart pounding, listening. Nothing but the wind rustling through the leaves. And then I heard it, a laugh, a soft, feminine laugh coming from somewhere behind me. I spun around, my hand on my sidearm. There was nothing there. The laugh came again, closer this time. "You came," the voice said. "You actually came." I didn't wait to hear what happened next. I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush, not stopping until I reached the ranger station. I never heard the voice again, but sometimes, late at night, I think about that laugh. I think about what might have happened if I'd stayed. And I'm grateful that I didn't. Story 8, The Missing Camper Who Came Back, 2017. This is the one that made me question everything I thought I knew. In the summer of 2017, a young man named Jason Porter went missing while camping in the Clearwater National Forest. He was 24 years old, an experienced outdoorsman, and he told his family he'd be back in 5 days. He never came back. A search was conducted, and after 2 weeks he was officially listed as missing. His family held a memorial service, and everyone assumed he was dead. And then 3 months later, he showed up. He walked into the ranger station one morning, looking tired and disheveled, but otherwise unharmed. He was wearing the same clothes he'd been wearing when he disappeared, and he had no memory of where he'd been. "I don't know what happened," he told me. "I remember setting up camp and then, nothing. It's like someone just erased 3 months of my life." I asked him where he'd been, what he'd done, how he'd survived. He couldn't answer any of my questions. He just shook his head and said, I don't remember anything." We had him checked out by a doctor, who found nothing physically wrong with him. His memory of the 3 months he was missing never returned. I've often wondered where Jason went during those 3 months. I've wondered what happened to him, what he saw, what he experienced. And I've wondered if maybe it's better that he doesn't remember. Story 9, The Ritual Site, 2018. I was doing a routine patrol of a remote section of the forest when I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. It was a clearing about 50 feet in diameter, surrounded by trees that had been marked with strange symbols. In the center of the clearing was a stone altar, stained dark with what looked like blood. Around the altar were the remains of animals, deer, rabbits, birds, all arranged in a pattern that looked almost intentional. Their bodies had been carefully positioned, their bones cleaned and polished, their skulls placed on wooden stakes. I've seen a lot of things in my years as a ranger. I've seen the aftermath of bear attacks, the remains of hikers who didn't make it, the scars left by wildfires, but I've never seen anything like this. I reported the discovery, and a team was sent to investigate. They determined that the site was the work of a cult, a group of people who had been using the forest for ritual purposes. The site was cleaned up and the symbols were removed, but I never forgot what I saw there. And I never went back to that part of the forest. Story 10, The Child in the Tree, 2019. It was a cold winter day, and I was doing a patrol of a section of the forest that had been closed due to heavy snow. I was about 2 miles from the station when I saw it, a child, sitting in the branches of a pine tree, watching me. It was a boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, dressed in old-fashioned clothes that looked like they belonged to another era. He was sitting on a branch about 15 feet off the ground, his legs dangling, his eyes fixed on me. "Hello there," I called out. "What are you doing up there?" The boy didn't respond. He just sat there watching me, his expression blank. "Are you lost?" I asked. "Do you need help getting down?" Still no response. I approached the tree cautiously, my heart racing. As I got closer, I noticed something strange about the boy. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes were too dark, too deep. "Can you hear me?" I asked. The boy smiled, a thin, cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. And then he said, "You shouldn't be here, Ranger. This place isn't for you." And then he vanished, just vanished like he was never there. I searched the area thoroughly, but I found no trace of the boy. No footprints in the snow, no signs that anyone had been there. I've never told anyone about that encounter, not because I'm afraid they won't believe me, but because I'm afraid they will. And I wonder sometimes if that boy was real, or if he was something else, something that only I could see. Story 11, The Forest That Moved, 2020. I'd been a ranger for 15 years by 2020, and I thought I knew the forest like the back of my hand. I'd walked every trail, explored every corner, memorized every landmark. And then one day, the forest moved. I was doing a routine patrol of the western boundary, following a trail I'd walked 100 times before. The trail led through a dense thicket of pines, across a small creek, and up a gentle slope to a ridge that offered a beautiful view of the surrounding mountains. But when I reached the ridge, something was wrong. The view was different. The mountains that should have been there weren't there. The valley that should have been below me wasn't there. Instead, I was looking at a landscape I didn't recognize, a vast, empty plain that stretched to the horizon in every direction. I stood there frozen, my mind racing. I knew this area, I knew what was supposed to be there, and this wasn't it. I turned around, intending to go back the way I came, but the trail was gone. The forest behind me was different, 2 trees that I'd never seen before, terrain that didn't match my memory. I was lost, completely and utterly lost, in a place I'd been 1,000 times before. I walked for hours trying to find my way back. Nothing looked familiar, nothing made sense. It was like the forest had rearranged itself while I wasn't looking. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The trees became familiar again, the trail reappeared, and I found myself standing in a place I recognized. I made my way back to the ranger station, shaken but unharmed. I never told anyone what had happened, who would believe me. But I know what I experienced, and I know that the forest is not as static as we think it is. It moves, it changes, and sometimes, if you're not careful, it will swallow you whole. Story 12, The Girl Who Wasn't There, 2021. It was a hot summer day, and I was at the ranger station, answering questions from visitors. A young girl, maybe 12 or 13 years old, came up to the counter and asked me for help. "I'm lost," she said. "I can't find my parents." I asked her name, and she told me. I asked her where she'd last seen her parents, and she pointed to a trail that led into the forest. I was following them, she said, and then they just disappeared. I took her to the search and rescue office, where we conducted a thorough search of the area. We found nothing. No sign of her parents, no indication that they'd ever been there. And then, as we were about to give up, the girl vanished. Just vanished like she was never there. I searched the station, the parking lot, the surrounding area. Nothing. The next day, I was going through some old files when I found a missing persons report from 1983. A young girl had gone missing in the same area, the same trail, under the same circumstances. Her name was the same as the girl who'd come to see me. I don't know what I saw that day. I don't know if it was a ghost, a time slip, or something else entirely, but I know that the girl was real, and I know that she needed help. I just wish I could have given it to her. Story 13, The Last Visit, 2023. My final year as a ranger, 18 years in the Idaho woods, and I was ready to move on. But the forest had one last joke to play. It was my last day, and I'd already said my goodbyes. My desk was cleared, my equipment signed over, my replacement hired and trained. I was just driving out for one final loop, a courtesy patrol, nothing more, a chance to let the miles roll under my tires and close the chapter. I took the old logging road that cuts through the northern district, a route I'd driven 1,000 times. It was late afternoon, the lights slanted and golden, and I had the windows down, letting the cool pine air wash over me. That's when my radio crackled. It was a voice I didn't recognize, young, female, panicked. "Ranger, please, I need help. I'm at the old ranger station on Pack River. The door won't open. The windows won't open. I've been in here for 3 days. Please, I'm begging you." I keyed the mic. "This is Ranger Mitchell. Identify yourself." Static, then the voice again, fainter now as if she was losing strength. "My name is Sarah. I'm a seasonal. I was doing inventory. The door slammed shut behind me and now I can't get out. There's no food. There's no water. Please hurry." I checked my map. The old Pack River station had been decommissioned in the 1980s. The building was boarded up, condemned, scheduled for demolition. There was no seasonal working out there. There was no inventory to do. "Sarah," I said, keeping my voice calm, "the Pack River station hasn't been staffed in 40 years. Are you sure that's where you are?" A long pause, then her voice again, but this time it was different, slower, curious. 40 years, she said. That can't be right. The calendar on the wall says July 1983. My hands tightened on the wheel. "Sarah, listen to me. What year do you think it is?" "I'm not stupid," she snapped. "It's 1983. I started 2 weeks ago. I was doing inventory. The door slammed shut. There's no food. There's no water. Please, I'm begging you." The loop, the exact same words, exactly as she'd said them a minute ago. I pulled over and grabbed my handheld, keying the district office. "This is Mitchell. I'm getting a distress call from someone claiming to be at the old Pack River station. Any known activity out there?" The dispatcher came back immediately. "Negative, Mitchell. Station's been vacant since '82. We've got nobody assigned to that sector." "I need you to pull records," I said. 1983. A seasonal named Sarah. She would have been doing inventory at Pack River. I need to know if that's a real person. The dispatcher was quiet for almost a full minute. When she came back, her voice was tight. "Mitchell, I've got a file here. Sarah Kellogg, seasonal ranger, assigned to Pack River Station. She was reported missing on July 19, 1983. The station was found locked from the inside. Her gear was there. She was never seen again." I sat there in my truck, listening to the radio hiss. Then Sarah's voice came through again, weaker than before. "Ranger, are you coming? Please, I can't stay here much longer. It's so dark in here now." I should have told her the truth. I should have told her I couldn't help her, that she'd been gone for 40 years, that there was nothing I could do. Instead, I said, "Sarah, I'm coming. Stay calm, I'm on my way." I put the truck in gear and drove toward Pack River. The road was overgrown, nearly impassable, but I pushed through. I had to see it. I had to know if the building was still there, if the door was locked, if there was anything left behind. It took me nearly an hour to reach the site. The sun had dropped behind the mountains, and the forest was deep in shadow. The old station was still standing. Barely. The roof had collapsed in the center, the windows were shattered, and the front door hung crookedly on a single hinge. It was a ruin, a dead building that hadn't held a living person in decades. But the back door, the one that led to the storage room, was intact, and it was closed. I walked around the side of the building, my flashlight cutting through the gloom. The back door was old, painted a faded red, and it had no visible lock, just a simple wooden handle. I grabbed the handle and pulled. It wouldn't budge. I threw my shoulder against it. Nothing. I braced my feet and heaved with everything I had. The door rattled in its frame, but it didn't open. And then from inside the room, I heard a voice. Weak, thready, breathing through the gaps in the wood. "Ranger, is that you? Please, I can hear you. Open the door, please. I can't breathe in here." I pressed my ear to the wood. "Sarah, are you in there?" "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'm here. I've been here so long. Please, open the door." I tried again. I kicked the door. I threw rocks at the hinges. I even fired 3 rounds into the lock mechanism, but the door held. It wouldn't open. It wouldn't even splinter. And then I saw it, a small, rusted plaque, bolted to the frame. I'd missed it in the dark. I aimed my flashlight at the plaque and read the faded letters. "In memory of Sarah Kellogg, Ranger 1983. This door sealed by order of the Forest Service, August 1983. Do not open." The voice from inside the room stopped. The silence was absolute. I stood there, my flashlight trained on that plaque, my heart hammering. The door was sealed. It had been sealed for 40 years, and yet I had heard her. I had spoken to her. She had answered me. I backed away from the door. I walked slowly to my truck. I got in, started the engine, and drove out of that forest. I didn't look back. I never told anyone what I'd heard that day. The district office has a file on Sarah Kellogg. It's classified as a cold case, an unresolved disappearance. Every few years, someone suggests opening the back door to see if there's anything left inside. The suggestion is always denied. I don't know if Sarah is still in that room. I don't know if she's been in that room for 40 years, or if the room itself is a trap that exists outside of time, waiting for someone to walk in and close the door behind them. I don't know if the door won't open because it's not a door anymore. It's a seal, a barrier, a boundary between this world and wherever Sarah ended up. But I know what I heard, and I know that when I pressed my ear to that wood, I heard someone breathing on the other side. Someone who had been waiting a very long time for someone to finally listen.